Okay, so you sent over some really interesting stuff from FinCrime Intelligence about the senior managers and certification regime SM&CR.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into this. The mission today for this deep dive is basically to figure out what SM&CR actually is, why it's a thing, and what kind of impact it has, especially when we're talking about financial crime.
Right.
And this material, it's from the FinCrime Intelligence platform. They're all about, well, financial crime, obviously content, resources, tools for people in compliance and risk.
Yeah, fraud, money laundering, cybercrime, they cover the whole range.
Exactly. So they're definitely in the thick of it.
Absolutely. And what's really striking about SMCR, even though, yes, it's UK regulation from the FCA and PRA,
UK watchdogs.
is how it tackles that core issue of individual accountability. And that idea, well, it has ripples far beyond the UK, especially for preventing financial crime.
So let's break it down then. What is SM&CR in simple terms? Sounds a bit official.
It does, yeah. Fundamentally, the senior managers and certification regime is a UK framework. As we said, FCA and PRA are behind it.
Okay.
The main point is to make specific people within financial firms more accountable. They're talking banks, building societies, credit unions, some investment firms, quite a wide range.
So holding individuals responsible.
Exactly. The idea is to clearly spell out who's responsible for what, especially at the senior level, and to make sure those key people are and stay fit and proper for their jobs.
Fit and proper. Okay, that phrase stands out. But why? I mean, why did the regulators feel this level of individual focus was needed? What problem were they solving?
Well, the big goals are really about improving behavior, increasing transparency, and just embedding a stronger sense of personal responsibility in the industry.
Right.
Regulators want senior people to be genuinely answerable, for decisions made on their watch and for the overall compliance culture of the place. And here's the critical part, I think. By making it crystal clear who's responsible for which area and ensuring they meet certain standards, SM&CR aims to stop misconduct happening in the first place. It cuts down on that gray area, the ambiguity about who's actually accountable if things go wrong.
Ah, so it's preventative in a way.
Very much so. I mean, think back to the financial crisis in '08. A major criticism was that you couldn't easily pin down who was responsible at the top.
Yeah, I remember that.
SM&CR addresses that head on. If there's a big failure in, say, risk management, there's a named senior manager whose statement of responsibilities covers that area. It makes it much harder to say, oh, I didn't know, or that wasn't really my job.
Okay, got it. Clear lines of responsibility from the get-go. Now, the FinCrime Intelligence stuff mentions 3 core pillars to SM&CR. Can you walk us through those?
Sure. So the first one is the Senior Managers Regime, or SMR. This is aimed squarely at the top brass, the people with significant decision-making power.
The exact.
Pretty much. Under SMR, firms have to create something called a Statement of Responsibilities for every single senior manager. It lists exactly what they're accountable for. And crucially, these individuals need the regulator's approval, the FCA or PRA, before they can even start the job.
Okay, so regulatory sign-off and a clear job spec for the top people. That's pillar number 2.
That's the certification regime. Now, this covers employees who aren't senior managers, but their jobs could still potentially cause significant harm to the firm or, importantly, its customers if things go wrong.
Right, so not the very top, but still critical roles.
Exactly. And for these people, the responsibility is on the firm itself to assess them every year and certify that they are still fit and proper.
Ah, so the company does the checking internally for this group.
Yes, at least annually. They're looking at things like, honesty, integrity, competence, even financial soundness. Have they been bankrupt? Any past regulatory issues, that sort of thing. It's an ongoing internal check.
Okay. And who might fall under that? Like traders or...
Yeah, potentially certain types of traders, people in key risk functions, maybe some compliance roles below the senior manager level. It depends on the potential for harm their role carries.
Gotcha. So yearly internal checkup for those key roles. And the third pillar.
The final piece is the conduct rules. And these are interesting because they apply to almost everyone working in these firms. Very few exceptions.
Wow, okay. So like from the top floor down to...
Pretty much down to most staff, yeah. They're basically high-level principles about how people should behave professionally. Things like acting with integrity, using proper skill and care, looking out for customers' best interests.
Standard good practice, you'd hope.
You would hope. But the key thing here is that breaches of these conduct rules have to be reported to the regulator.
Really? Even for more junior staff, that's quite something.
It is. It shows how seriously they're taking conduct across the board.
So it's this comprehensive thing covering senior managers, key staff, and then broad rules for almost everyone, all pointing towards clearer responsibility and better conduct. How does this actually change things inside a firm, though? The FinCrime piece talks about governance and culture.
Yeah, and that's really the bigger picture, isn't it? SM&CR isn't just about rules on paper. It's meant to drive a real cultural shift.
How so?
Well, it pushes firms to actively try and embed ethical behavior, make compliance awareness part of the job and make that individual accountability feel real in day-to-day work. It's about moving it from a sort of tick box exercise to something that's part of the company's DNA.
And I suppose that clarity, knowing who's responsible for what, must help the regulators too if something does go wrong.
Oh, absolutely. If there's an investigation or some kind of failure, SM&CR gives the regulators a much clearer map to follow. They can see who was formally accountable for that specific area. That transparency alone can be a pretty powerful deterrent, you'd think.
Makes sense. Now, putting new rules like this in place, it's never totally smooth sailing, is it? The material mentions challenges, especially for smaller firms. What sort of issues crop up?
That's a fair point, and yeah, the practicalities can be tough. As FinCrime Intelligence points out, for smaller firms, it can feel like a big administrative load.
Like what specifically?
Well, mapping out all those senior management responsibilities accurately, keeping all the certification records up to date, rolling out conduct rules training to everyone. It takes time and resources they might not have as readily available as the big players.
Right. The article mentioned some might see it as overregulation. Is that fair or?
You can see why some might feel that way initially, especially with the admin burden.
But the piece also says the long-term benefits often win out, right?
That's the argument, yes. While it costs time and money up front, the potential payoff is lower regulatory risk, stronger internal controls, and hopefully more trust from customers and the market. So the idea is it might be painful to set up, but it leads to a healthier, more trustworthy system overall.
Okay. And it's interesting, you said it's UK specific, but the FinCrime Intelligence article suggests its ideas have spread a bit. How's it viewed internationally?
Yeah, what's quite telling is that the basic ideas behind SM&CR, that sharp focus on individual accountability, especially for senior people, have definitely caught the eye of regulators elsewhere.
Really?
Particularly after some of the big misconduct scandals we've seen globally over the years. There's just this growing sense everywhere that you need to hold individuals more directly responsible, not just the company as a whole. So while other countries might not copy the UK framework exactly, SM&CR is seen as a kind of significant model for how you might tackle that accountability issue.
So the UK has been a bit of a trailblazer here. Okay, let's bring it back to FinCrime Intelligence's main focus then. Financial crime. How does SM&CR actually help prevent things like fraud or money laundering? What's the connection?
This is really where it bites, I think. By making it absolutely clear who is accountable for what, especially leaders, SM&CR puts someone directly on the hook for preventing financial crime within their area of responsibility.
Okay, so the buck stops clearly with someone.
Exactly. And then you've got the certification regime, adding another layer, making sure people in those crucial roles are regularly checked for being suitable. That proactive oversight is key.
Right.
And beyond the specific roles, SM&CR hammers home the importance of the tone from the top. Senior leaders are explicitly expected to foster an ethical culture and make sure the firm has solid risk management and compliance systems in place to actually stop fraud, insider dealing, money laundering, and so on.
So it's not just having policies. It's making sure the leadership is demonstrably responsible for making them work and for building a culture where crime isn't tolerated.
Precisely that. It's trying to shift from just punishing the firm after the fact to a system where individuals know they are personally accountable for their actions and for the controls working properly in their bit of the business.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So wrapping this up then, the senior managers and certification regime in the UK is really all about boosting individual accountability in finance, especially for senior folk. The whole point seems to be define roles clearly, check key people regularly, have conduct rules for everyone, and through all that, build a better, more ethical culture that's better at stopping things like financial crime.
That's a great summary. It's regulation designed to make sure individuals feel responsible, not just hope they do the right thing, but know they'll be held to account if they don't, or if things go wrong on their watch.
Really clear. Okay, so here's something to chew on, a final thought for you listening. We've seen how this model, clear roles, individual responsibility, focus on conduct, is being used in the complex world of finance. But could those same ideas work elsewhere? Think about other complex fields, other types of organizations. Is that kind of sharp focus on individual accountability maybe the key to getting better results across the board?